Welcome to this series of short tutorials covering different aspects of InDesign with me, Duran. In this tutorial I will be covering setting up a document in InDesign and laying the foundations of a grid. First of all, I'm going to create a project folder. I'm going to press Apple-Shift-N. I'm going to name this. Obviously you're free to name it whatever you wish. I'm going to open that directory up and I'm going to create two more directories. One for my images, which I'm going to call images, and another one for my project files. Now, in InDesign, it's really important that you keep all your content all in the same place, especially if you're going to work in an environment where you might need to go to a different machine or work in a different classroom if you're in education. So it's worth keeping all your images that you use in one directory. So I like to make a project folder, and then everything that I use I contain in one place. Okay, I'm just going to close that down now, and I'm going to go into InDesign. I've already opened it to save some time, but it's this purple icon here. The icon differs in different versions of CS Suite. Let's click on that. You might be confronted by a welcome screen, which will look something like this. Now, I'm not going to go into all the kind of what this does, but I don't personally like this. I'm just going to close that, and I'm going to go straight up to File, New Document. You could hit Apple N or Command N. Up should pop the New Documents dialog box. So I'm just going to go through some of the settings here just to explain a few things. So first of all, we've got the document preset. Now I'm going to put that back to default because I've been making postcards. Next up, we've got paper, number of pages. So we're making a book, so we're going to need a few pages to start us off. We can always add more pages later, so we don't need to worry too much about this number, but I'm just going to put in 20 for this. Next up is facing pages. So that's this area here. Now, facing pages is when you're making a book. There's obviously two pages that face each other. Now, let me just show you a book spread which we're going to copy. So this is a picture of a spread. We've got essentially a 4-column grid. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, which is replicated on the other side, on the other facing page. Now, what I mean by facing pages is this page here and this page here essentially face each other. When you close the book, they look at each other, and that's what it means. If you were designing something that was going to be single pages, like a PDF document or possibly a series of posters, then you're talking about single sheets, so you're not going to want the facing pages button turned on. Now, let's go back to InDesign. Let's minimize this. Okay. So facing pages, well, we're making a book, so we're going to leave that on facing pages. Now, I've obviously gone to the trouble of measuring that spread that we're going to copy. So I'm just going to put in, rather than using one of the A sizes or one of the presets for the page sizes, I'm going to put in my measurements. So it's going to be 255 by 230. Now, it's worth mentioning here that the units it's measuring up is in millimeters. Now, you can change this up in preferences. Alternatively, you could actually type in a different type. If I wanted to put in centimeters, I could put in 23, and instead of putting millimeters, I could put centimeters, and then that will automatically convert it to millimeters. I could put point sizes and various different formats. Okay, columns. So, as I said before, our grid was made up of 4 columns, so I'm going to put this up to 4. Now, the gutter is the space between the columns. So I've already measured this, and this is 8 millimeters. So I'm going to put this in. Now, margins. Now, you'll notice that this little padlock is highlighted, and that means if I change one number, let's say change it to 10, it changes all the margins around. Now, because I'm making a book, I don't necessarily want these to be the same. So I'm going to unclick that padlock and change these. Now, if I just go to my minimized document that we were looking at before, you can see that the margins are kind of a little bit different on each edge. So the bottom's got a little bit more space than the top. But the most important thing is the byte of the book obviously takes up a little bit of the paper. It's quite an old book, so it lies quite flat. But in a new book, that actually takes up quite a bit of paper, so you need to allow for that in your design. What we were trying to achieve is visually this area here, it looks the same as this area here. Okay, so let's minimize that back again. So there again, I've measured that, so I'm just going to type in those measurements. 17, 23, 25, 15. Now I've also got this extra bit at the bottom here called Bleedin Slug. Now you might come to this dialog box with it looking more like this. If you want to get that option open, it's under this More Options. Now bleed is something you best asking the printer, whoever's going to print this eventually, asking them what kind of bleed they want. Essentially it's an extra bit of area on top of or beyond the edges of your paper. So if you're putting a full bleed image, don't end up with an image which has a little slither of white down the edge where the print is not quite aligned to where the cropping has happened. So this is generally between 2 and 3, maybe like 5 millimeters. I'm going to put in 3 millimeters here. Now in this instance I want this to be exactly the same all around, so I'm going to leave that padlock on, and if I click then it does that for me. Okay, so we're pretty much ready to hit OK now, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So InDesign has gone ahead and created our book for us. Now if we look at the Pages palette, which is this one here, we can, if I scroll down, you can see that it's created our 20 pages for us. So there's one last thing we need to do, is just go up to File, Save. And we're going to save this document. Now we're going to go to the desktop, find Demo Project, Project Files, and I'm just going to call this Demo Book Version 1. Now I always like to add version numbers, and then when I do a save as instead, and then I can add version 2, version 3. And that way, if I end up on version 5 and a client comes and says actually they prefer version 3, I've always got a copy of that rather than saving over the document. So I'm going to press Save. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this tutorial with me, Dan Duran. Please join us again when we'll be covering another exciting installment of InDesign.